Hello, hello, and welcome to the Coaching Business Spotlight Show. I'm your host, Kat Knecht, and I'm excited to share with you the soul-driven strategies that will help you in your business and life. Today, I continue my fall series on stories, specifically the stories that coaches share that are vulnerable, honest, and inspiring, the ones that bring hope to others, because I believe that sharing our stories is the best way to connect with potential clients in a way that's authentic, right? We're always talking about that. We want to do this in an authentic way. Well, share your story. That's what we're going to talk about. Because what I believe is that when we connect with people that might be interested in our services, of course, that's what we want. But for the most part, we coaches are also, as a profession, ones that genuinely care about humankind, at least the coaches that I know and the ones that I work with. So, over the 2 decades I've been in business, I've found that telling my own vulnerable stories, stories about trauma, failure, and the ones that are the most popular are the stories I tell about the mistakes that I've made. People like those the best. And I've made a lot of mistakes. So I get to do this. This is great for attracting new business. I've had my blog, it's been almost 20 years. And there are some people, this is a true thing, that are on my list that were on my list 20 years ago. And my niche has changed a lot, but they stay on my niche because we are now in relationship. I've shared a slice of my life. They've shared their stories with me. So in my business building course, there's a lesson on crafting story to connect your niche. And I've been told that it is one of the hardest to get through because in order to really tell the story, you have to do some healing. And that's part of our growth as coaches is that there's a healing. I went to a songwriting camp and the leader, Todd Snyder, so it was a whole different thing than coaching. He instructed us to write songs that were healing and that felt good for us to share. Not like, yay, good, more like, this is from my heart. And this is feels like an important story to share. So, joining me today to help me explore storytelling, how it has impacted his audience, is one of the Soul Driven Success community members, Todd Karges. And this is what Todd says about his coaching practice. He says, my coaching practice is both a safe and brave space where we can work together to transform your world. I've been trained as a coactive coach by the Coactive Training Institute and have decades of corporate leadership life experience. My clients come from many professions, industries, and identities, and they include lawyers, HR professionals, technology leaders, executives, and artists. We all long to make the most meaningful contribution to our lives and our work as possible. And our world is changing. We need to be able to adapt. What made leaders successful in the past won't keep them successful in the future. So, by working together, we can look at your goals and start to unpack your choices to forge a fulfilling forward. It's beautiful. It's inspiring. That right there, right? Did you hear it, right, Todd? So, welcome to the
Thank
show,
you.
Todd. I'm
Thanks,
just
Kat. It's
curious,
great to
like,
be here.
yeah, like hearing your own words
It uh,
spoken.
it's interesting. I wasn't expecting to hear that because it sounds pretty good when you read it back to me.
That's really, this is, I like in segueing into this because, right, that's what we're really here to explore. There is
Yeah.
this communication that is necessary for us to have with people. I'm just going to say
Hmm.
people when we're talking about our business. It's really,
Exactly.
really an important piece. So I know I
Exactly.
get this so often. Oh, I don't like marketing as coaches. I don't want to be too salesy. To me, this is the place to go in
Hmm.
order to make it something very, very different than salesy or marketing. And yet,
Hmm.
as you heard those words, you can feel there's a connection made.
It, something. It's interesting, Kat, because it was something that you you didn't say it to me, but it was something that I heard you say before we even really knew each other very well. And it was the really important thing is for your clients to see themselves
Mhm.
in you.
Mhm.
And I mean, that was a transformative moment for me because it was then that I realized, oh, wait a minute, like there was a time in my life when I needed what I'm able to do. And
Right.
what were those words? Like what were the things that, like, who did I need to see? Like who, and it's almost kind of like, what would it have meant to show up for myself 5, 10, 15 years ago? And right? And what is that? Because the thing is, I mean, we're all unique, precious snowflakes, of course, right? But we're not that unique. Like my
It's like, yes, here's this very specific wonderfulness thing or about me, but
Mhm.
like there's just this thread of humanity
Yeah.
that we all
Yeah.
share.
And common experience. Like obviously my life experience is completely unique. Like no one has done Todd Karges the way that I have, which is, I mean, great because, no one wants to. But also, the threads and the commonalities, like you mentioned, are there. And there's a, yeah, well, humanity, but also like also experience, right? Like my trauma isn't your trauma, but at the same time, it's still trauma. And I think it was, and again, I believe that this is wisdom that I got from you, so I'm not going to
Well,
pretend that
let's
this
hear
is
it. Come on.
this is original, but you know, uh, people will see themselves in you. You don't have to tell their story for that to happen. They're good at filling in the gaps.
I love that.
So, right? So when I
Yeah.
talk about, what my experience was, what my story is, I know that it's very specific to me, but it only has to resonate with X percent. And I don't know what that X is yet, but it only has to resonate with X percent of someone who's hearing it for them to go, oh, you know what? That's kind of like what I did. Maybe I should talk to him.
There's so many places I want to dive down here, but I'm going to go to this place because I want to just touch on this. When you doing, the lesson that I talked about in the Evolve Your Coaching Business course,
Hmm.
I know it was challenging. Like I
Hmm.
said, for everybody, like everybody, like
It
they're
just
like
it took me months to get through
they
that.
get there, and I'm like, okay. So
Yeah.
what have you found out now that you've gone through that process, and now that you're sharing those stories with people?
I'm going to answer that in reverse, if that's okay, because what
I
I'm discovering,
go for it.
what I'm discovering is exactly what you said I would discover, which is that people are resonating with the story, and it's not necessarily where I think they'll
Hmm.
pop in. Like it's the part that's important to them. My job is to tell the story and to tell it
Uh-huh.
truthfully and to tell even the parts that are hard to tell, and actually the parts that are hard to tell are,
I'm just kind of curious, what makes a part hard to tell of your
"Hmm,
story?
I'm not proud of everything that I've done in
Ah,
business. I'm not,
yeah.
well, you read that lovely thing that I have on LinkedIn and about working with leaders and working through corporate leaders and the things that they do. And I was a corporate leader, but I was also sometimes a tyrant in those times. And I started
Mhm.
talking about, well, what was it like? Like what was the impact on me of being a hard leader that really worked people and didn't care about them and didn't care about what the impact was. And what I discovered is also that my experience of those moments is sometimes completely different from the experience of the people who were in the. Can I tell a quick little story?
Okay, but I just want to
Do you-
underline
oh
something you
yeah, go
said.
ahead.
Okay, I want to
Oh yeah.
underline something you said because it was you all, I don't know how you started it. It was like I might like reverse engineer this, and I heard something
Mhm,
in there. You said the impact on you.
mhm,
So that to me is one of the key pieces in telling our
mhm,
stories. So you said, you're not proud of everything you've done, and
mhm.
there's a way you were that had an
Yes.
impact on you.
Yes.
Because that's where it really got interesting to me as you were telling it, because I feel like, oh, that's what people really want to hear. And like you said, the impact you had on other people, you might not even know what that was. Part of
Mhm,
we don't always know what our impact is, but
mhm,
where we can go in our stories is knowing, oh,
mhm.
this is how it felt to me. This was where
Yeah.
I was asleep, or this was where it was hard, or this is where I think, how could I have, like you said, like not been my better self and in some
Yeah.
ways been my lower self.
Yeah,
And that's what
absolutely.
you're
How
sharing.
could I have done that? How could I have been that person? Like that's a question that happens all the time. And that was the thing that made it difficult. Yeah, you asked what
Right.
made it hard to tell the story. It was like
Yeah.
how,
Yeah.
who was that person that I'm telling the story about?
Yeah.
You've heard that exercise, about living above the line and living below the line. And one of the things that I did was I plotted, where I was in my life and whether I was above the
Ooh.
line and whether I was below the line. And as I was telling my story, this is one of the reasons why that exercise in the program was so difficult. As I was telling my story, I realized, Kat, that there were decades that I lived below the line, just
That's yeah.
consistently.
And so from there, I'm curious when you've been putting your stories out. We're going to go in
Starting to,
that a little
yeah, for
deeper. Yeah,
sure.
you've been putting
Mhm.
the stories out. And what you said was, and this is I find this is a thought I had before we even started today. I was like, I'm really curious what stories get the most response or what part of the story do people bring up or is it just random?
Wow. I wish I had a really good answer to that.
I
You
do
know that
too,
I'm,
because I want
well,
to know, Todd. I really
well,
want to
that I'm
know.
experimenting with the stories, right? And I'm
Yeah.
telling a bunch of different stories in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
And I think, the thing that's interesting is the climax, if you will, of my story, the one that I'm telling, right, is corporate career, up and to the right, and it becomes burnout and,
Mm,
you know, breakdown, whatever, right? Like it's eventually the body says, no, you can't do that anymore. And that's what
right.
happened to me.
Right.
And I think what I'm discovering is that there are people who see themselves on that path just because they hear that someone else is, or they've experienced that themselves. And to be honest, whether it's like I've already experienced this, or whether it's, I'm starting to recognize that that might be where I'm headed. Those are the people that are most sort of interested. And then it becomes, well, what else? Like, what got you to that point? What were the things that led there? And then there becomes curiosity into, into what those sort of details, what those particles might have been.
Yeah. Well, you did answer the question.
Oh,
You
good.
did have an answer.
Yay.
Because because this is again, so often as coaches, we say we don't solve people's problems,
Mhm.
but we need to hear what it actually calls out. Oh, that's what's happening to me.
Yeah.
Because so often the biggest challenges in life and
Hmm.
definitely in our work is we don't know what's happening to us.
Hmm.
We have some underlying
Hmm.
like nudges, like something's not right, whatever it might be. If we find ourselves, like doing things that we know that's
Yeah.
not really a great way to treat myself or to be, but we don't really know why or what's happening
Yeah.
because in our culture we just aren't taught this. We aren't
Hmm.
taught. We're just taught go for success, do the things, whatever, like some real basic and not necessarily healthy. So you don't know what you don't know.
Hmm.
And that's what I heard in what you just said. When we tell our stories, we connect. Oh, maybe there's something here.
I Yes. What I love about that is and because it's oh, the conversations that I've had after telling the stories sort of bring that out because people are saying things like, you know what, I didn't even have language for this. Like I
Right.
knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was. And hearing someone else describe their experience is sometimes a way to put words around what it was. Like I think if someone had told a story like the one that I tell, and I'd heard it maybe 5 years ago,
Mm.
I maybe would have avoided some of the worst parts of the story that I tell.
That's so right there to me is like there's the biggest reason. Yeah, right. It's we want people to know about our business and service, but we
Hmm.
also it's like because that's how we learn. It's not just
Hmm.
this isn't like I didn't make this up that we learn from other people's stories. I just got cued into it and got, oh,
Right.
this is what it is. It's telling those true stories and
Mhm.
people actually go, yeah, they don't actually have to go through all the hard necessarily time because they get you just use that example below the line, above the line. They maybe don't have to go below the line so far or so
Exactly.
much. And they
Well,
can, ooh, I
yeah,
can go somewhere.
and isn't that what we want? Like that's what we want
Mhm.
for the people that we work with is to spend more of their time above the line, whatever that means for them. because what it means for me isn't the same as what it means for you or what it means for your clients or my clients or anyone else. It's something that they've got to understand on their own terms. But if you don't even know that you're below the line, and to be honest, when I did that plot point, one of the reasons that it took so long was because it's like, oh my God, I can't believe that I spent that long down there. Like what was I doing down there for so long? I just thought
Oh
that
my
life was
gosh.
hard. But
Oh, I know, I know, I know. I've been telling my stories for a long time, and there are
Mhm,
two things I want to bring in here because one of the stories I tell is about having been kidnapped
right.
and having lived through the experience and what I
Hmm.
learned from it.
Hmm.
And so I'm telling that story not because I think there are other kidnapping victims out there who
Hmm.
like, oh, it's more like here's what I grew through. Part
Yeah.
of my story though that I in my longer story when I really get down and I parsed this out over 20 years was how long it took me to take
Hmm.
my what I learned and really live it.
Yeah.
That's the part. So when you're talking about, when I want to tell my story, it's like, yeah, I learned something,
Hmm.
but guess what? I went to sleep around it. I was true to it and then not true to it.
Yeah.
I went through years and years of resisting until I got really sick. I got really
Hmm.
sick, and that's often one of the things that happens.
Hmm.
Something we get in an accident or we get addicted to something or we get sick. Like you said it earlier, like the body goes, wait a minute,
Yep.
this is not going to, you cannot keep going on this path.
Exactly.
You got to
Yep. This
stop.
is not sustainable.
So I told this story, this kidnapping story. I was at a retreat with other CTI leaders last weekend. Really fun. But the story just comes up. It's just weird. It's
Hmm.
like somebody was asking if you could write your memoir, what would it be about? And this story comes up. I got a new insight on it. This is something that I love about us telling our stories. Do I know this story? Yeah, I know the story. It's been so
Hmm.
long. I've told it so many times. But I actually got new insight about what I'm here to share about my story. So this is a part, and I'm going to give this quote because it's become my favorite quote of the week. And this came off the internet. This just came off the internet. Somebody I sent it to me in an email, and they didn't say who it was from.
Hmm.
Here's the quote: Sometimes we have to go through the darkest of times to become the person we needed in those dark times. Living as
Oh,
that person, that is our purpose.
I love that.
So it's less about, so when you said that, I've been holding this quote because I'm like, Todd, you're really speaking to it here. When you talked about all the below the line, it's like we
Yeah.
have to go through that to become the person that we needed. And as coaches, we now can help. We're like, I can
Hmm.
help you through that dark time to
Hmm.
be the person you need to be now.
Hmm. Yeah. And it's interesting because I think as coaches, we have a responsibility to healing ourselves. I got to
Yes.
tell you, Kat, like when I started down this coaching path, if someone had said to me, "Oh, you know what? You're going to go on a journey of self-exploration. You are going to transform yourself, and it's going to be painful and hard, and you're not going to recognize yourself sometimes through this process," I maybe would have done. Oh, yeah. Is this really what I want?
Yeah.
I mean, and don't get me wrong, extraordinarily fulfilling. I'm so glad and so thankful that I met people like you and others of my mentors and coaches who have helped me through this process. And if I'd known it was going to be this hard,
Well, here's the piece. People, there's a lot of myth out there about life coaching or business coaching or
yeah,
whatever kind of coaching that we're doing. And what you're speaking to is this. So we're well trained. There's a lot of training we have as coaches. It is a well trained profession, but this piece is
mhm,
also, I think, what makes it so special is that we actually can help people
yes,
from a place of I've I've actually done the work
mhm,
personally. Like you said,
mhm,
I don't know if any of us would sign up or we maybe all would because it's so great to
exactly,
have to do the work. It's not easy, but without it, we actually can't help people at the level that they
yeah.
need it from us.
Well, and particularly if you're in sort of the corporate space or the business space, like there's no shortage of folks who are operating in that place of active or passive harm. And
Mm.
I think that's
Yes.
the thing that's so interesting is like the analogy that I use is it's like quitting smoking, which when I was a smoker, I used to say it was the easiest thing I ever did because I quit hundreds of times every day.
I was right
Um,
there
but
beside you on that one, Todd. Oh my gosh, so many
but
times.
but the thing is, it's really, really hard for 6 months, 9 months, whatever it is. But
Mhm.
at some point in there, and it's
Mhm.
not that the craving goes away, it's that moment where you realize, oh my God, I was sick for years, and this is what healthy feels like. And that's something that's just astonishing. Now apply that to sort of more broadly, like now apply that to your nervous system.
Mhm.
Now apply that to your ability to lead yourself and others. Now apply that to what it's like to show up at work and to live on purpose on your own terms rather than someone else's. Oh my
Woohoo!
God, that's transformational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So inspiring.
So
So I'm curious how I don't want to ask the same question over again. It feels like a
sure.
different question, but you've been doing these videos. Like,
Uh-huh.
how is that going? Like for coaches who are listening to this show, because a lot of coaches are like, "Oh, I don't really know if I should do that, or what should I do?" Or
Hmm.
you've just jumped right out there, and yeah, I know it's an experiment, but
It
you've
is.
been doing it. Like, tell,
I
like, what's the
I thought here's the thing that I thought would be hard isn't the thing that was hard. Like that's like the thing that I thought would be hard would be turning on the camera
uh-huh.
and doing something live. And that's the thing, like I'm not recording these things and making them fancy. Like I'm just like sticking a camera in my face and streaming it live and seeing what emerges. And
Yeah,
sometimes I'm by
yeah.
myself and sometimes I'm with someone else. And I thought that would be the nerve-wracking thing. But the really the hard part has been I want the hard part has been reminding myself that this is the thing that I do in order to do the thing that I want to do, in order to do the thing that I love. Because I love being in
Mhm.
front of people and helping those transformations happen. And ultimately, that's not happening when I'm telling my story, but telling the story is what lets me do that. And I think that's the thing that's the thing that I always have to remind myself of. Like my story, I lived my story. My story is interesting to
Yeah.
other people, I guess, right? But
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
I feel like
yeah.
I'm repeating myself when I tell it over and over again. But
Yeah, I
but
know that feeling
right.
really, really well.
but
So
but
the
but it's
hard part is not
yeah.
just like get out there like that. The hard part, or maybe there isn't really a hard part, but it's like remembering the reason that you're doing it,
Remembering to
and
and be consistent. Like
yeah.
just, because yeah, maybe this one isn't going to hit, maybe that one's not going to hit, maybe and it doesn't. It's not going to hit, but then it will. And that, like, then someone's going to see the thing, and the thing is going to be important to that someone. And then
Oh,
you'll find that out.
yeah. So there's being consistent because that's exact and not it's almost like I hear not taking it too seriously in a
Oh
sense,
no.
but also remembering it's
Mm.
purposeful. Like that
Yeah,
paradox, like this is here, I'm putting my story out for a reason, but each one in and of itself, we said this in the beginning, I found this to be true. I feel like I have a bit of a knowing what's going to hit. And then I'm like, what? That was the one? Like,
that's it. That's the
aha!
thing. I've done a couple of these things, and some of them I were like, ugh, that wasn't very good.
Yeah,
And that was, and that was the
right.
one that people were like, oh, I really love that. This piece here really resonated with me. It's like it did? Okay,
Right.
cool.
Right.
Because the thing is, I can open my soul and I can say, here I am, but I can't determine which part of that is interesting to you. Only you
Ah.
can.
Oh, I love that. Not for you to judge which part's interesting
Mm-mm.
for people. And again,
Nope.
because it's their story, it's what they've lived. We don't know. On that particular day, that one
Hmm.
person had a thing
Hmm.
happen with their boss,
Hmm.
and you said something about the boss,
Hmm.
and they're like, I needed to hear that exact thing
Exactly.
today.
And just, so just keep at it. Like, if I were to say something, it's like try it out and do it. And we've heard this 1,000 times too, to the point that it's almost a platitude, right? But, perfection is the enemy of progress. And if I tried to get it perfect every time, I'd never do any of it.
And nobody wants
And
that. And actually,
yeah.
nobody wants that. Nobody that
Hmm.
the perfect and doing it right and having it look all shiny is
Hmm.
not. where we hit people. But again,
Mhm,
I'm going to underline this again because I actually think the key that you brought on is that you remember why you're doing it.
mhm.
And that is a key because people feel
Yeah.
that actually, one thing I feel that there's an energy. They feel, oh, you're doing it this for a reason
Mhm.
to actually connect with me and help me. You're not doing this so that you'll become famous as a live
No,
stream video maker.
no, I don't want to be a content creator.
Or
I don't
what
want
I
to be
was
a
like,
content
it's
creator.
like,
I want to be a coach. Why do I do
right.
this?
That's right. Oh, it's so cool.
Yeah,
So we just have a few minutes left. Oh my
sure.
gosh. Where can people find you so they can watch these videos? And I know you had a story you were going to tell and you didn't get to tell it. So
Oh,
if you
that's
still
okay.
want to tell that
Yeah.
story, we have a couple minutes now.
Actually, if someone's really interested, then reach out to me and I will tell the story one on one.
Well, no, the
That's,
listeners are going to go, what? So
oh
tell the
yeah.
story. Yeah, tell the story.
Okay, it's a real fast one. You know what? So quickly, and this is one of those stories that I tell about my past
Uh-huh.
and being a tyrant. And I remember I was at a company and we were working hard all the time. Like it was one of those times everyone's working 60, 70 hours a week. And someone came to my office and said, "Todd, this is terrible. I can't work under these conditions anymore." And my response to them was, "Okay, well, I can't change the conditions, so do you need a box?" And and they said, what do you mean?" And I said, "Well, I can't change the conditions, so I'm guessing you're quitting, right?" "Nope." Right. Isn't that terrible that I did that?
Well, no,
But
no. So here's the thing. It's just like it's like that's reality.
yeah. But you know
That's
what's really interesting is I connected with that person years later and
mm,
I apologized.
mm.
They didn't remember that I ever said that. I held that with me for 20 years. They didn't remember at all. They said to me, I remember you as an inspiring leader.
That's
What?
powerful. That's
That's
really
weird.
powerful.
But it's just like,
Wow.
don't believe everything you think is part of what pops up for me in that, because I filled in a whole bunch of gaps about what I was and who I was.
Mm,
And the way that other people experienced me was different, or the
yeah.
way that that individual experienced me in that moment was different.
And so what I'm feeling right now is just this story that you just told will connect with someone out there.
Mm,
They might have been holding on to something because sometimes we
yeah.
hold on to things about ourselves that are not true, although the
Yeah.
facts might be true. It's kind of the whole story in our head
Mhm,
we've made up. And there
yeah.
might be a little relief for somebody, a little bit of a
Yeah.
crack of forgiveness of like, huh, and this is
Forgiveness.
where I want to tie that story into coaching,
Mm,
because that's what we do as coaches. That's what you do for
yeah.
these people is you help them
Well,
take a look at themselves, find the places they want to forgive and let
yeah.
go, right? And move on.
What am I hanging on to so tight that it hurts?
Mhm.
And how do I let go of it? What would it be like if I just loosened it up a little bit? Like, what's a baby step?
Mhm.
And eventually letting go just become lovely. It's a question that you asked once. You said, "Todd, what would make this easy?" I ask myself that question every morning.
I have a little sign.
I love that you have that on a sign. I've only got it on a post-it note. I
I
can see it.
have it on a sign because guess what? I need it the most.
Oh,
It's been so
yeah.
delightful having you. So people check out Todd.
Thank
All
you.
the information goes along with this podcast.
Awesome.
Find him on the LinkedIn is where I've been watching your show
Thank you.
and
I'm
connect
also
with
on
him.
YouTube and
Oh,
or on
cool.
my website, www.toddkarges.com. Oh,
Beautiful. Thank you
thank
so
you.
much, Todd.
Thank you, Kat. This was a pleasure.